This is J. Krishnamurti's fifth public talk in Saanen, 1969.
We shall go on, if we may, with what we were talking about the other day when we met here. When one sees what is happening in the world, the social injustice, the wars, the riots, the increasing criminality, the fragmentations religiously and otherwise. What is a human being to do, realizing the things as they are, not emotionally interpreting them according to one's particular idiosyncrasy or desire? Where is one to begin? And what are the major problems which have to be solved by each one of us as human beings? Realizing the churches, the temples, the mosques, the politicians, the educators, the scientists, the popes, the priests, and all the gurus and teachers have completely failed. What is a human being to do? Where is he to look for his guidance, for his understanding? Where is he to dig deep so that he pushes aside his own darkness, his own ignorance, and observes very clearly? Where is he now? Though they have walked on the moon and probably will go further, will produce children chemically and so on and on and on. One realizes one has to start as though one knew nothing, only the problems that confront us and nothing else. The problems, as we said, are love, pleasure, fear, in which there is this incessant demand to be secure, and the sorrow, and finally the question of death. These are the problems that each one of us must resolve or understand or find out their true significance, because that is our life. That's our everyday life of every human being right throughout the world, whether he's a communist, a socialist, a capitalist, a religious, Catholic, and all the rest of the divisions. The human problem right through the world is the same. And there is nobody to help us. Because they have all failed. The books, the interpreters of those books, the philosophers, the educators, the theologians, and so on. And where is one Where is one to begin? Confronted with these problems. We went into the question of what love is. We said that one discovers what love is when we find out what it is not. It's not jealousy, not envy, not hate, antagonism, competition, greed, envy, the violence, sexually, possessively, in which there is a great deal of dependence, and so on. We went into the question of what is pleasure. May I ask whose dog it is? Won't you do something about that dog? We went into the question of what is pleasure. Pleasure, like fear, we said is sustained by thought, nourished, given further encouragement, push, drive by thought. Pleasure and fear are the continuation of sustained thought, thinking about that which has given pleasure or that which has given fear as danger, the past, the present, or in the future. In that fear is involved security, not only physical security, but also the whole region, the complex network of psychological dependencies. That dependency brings about the urge, the demand, the desire to be completely secure. Or the demand produces the dependency. To be secure in all relationships. And we also said thought is sustained by memory, experience, knowledge. And we went to that, into the question of the brain, which is the result of time evolution, the brain which demands complete physical security, otherwise it cannot possibly function healthily. But when there is the demand for psychological security and therefore dependency, then the disorder begins. And this disorder is this constant battle of our life. Our life is a battlefield. Not something which we can avoid, but which we have to understand and, if possible, to go beyond. And this battle, this constant striving, conflict, contradiction, the anxiety, the fear, the agony, the torture, of which all of us know, brings about the burden of sorrow. And there is always the fear of not being, not having a continuity, which is what is called death. These are the problems. Love, pleasure, fear, security, thought, the whole machinery and the structure and the nature of thought, and the ultimate fear of death. Now, these conflicts, these psychological states, has created a society, a culture of morality, a respectability in which every human being is caught, both economically, socially, and religiously. Because there is fear, because there is the demand for security, and the incessant seeking of greater and greater pleasure, has produced a modern society. And in that trap, each human being is caught. Whether he lives in Japan, India, America, or Russia, wherever he lives. That is the problem we have. And no other problem. Because the speculative idea, the speculation about God, truth, the infinite, the immeasurable, the nameless, have no meaning whatsoever until you have solved these problems. Because then they offer mere escape from actually what is. Not that there is not something supreme which each one has to find out, but that cannot possibly be until we lay the foundation of righteous behavior, not depending on your particular idiosyncrasy, your particular conditioning, or the particular culture in which one has been brought up, or based on any particular belief. But the righteous behavior that comes when you discover for yourself what is love and what is not love. To find out what is love, one has to discard entirely the whole moral, social approach to living. Because the social morality is no morality whatsoever. And so one has to understand pleasure, pain, fear, security, and the ultimate fear of death. We are using the word understand not intellectually, because most of us do critically are aware of the problem. verbally. But when we use the word understand, we mean a total involvement. A complete one with this problem. The problem of love and so on. Not the mere acceptance of it, but the total involvement in it. Because that's our life. Not what you believe, not what your nationality is, not whether you are Swiss, American, or that's all too infantile. But to be completely and totally involved in this problem, not as an intellectual, not as an outsider looking in, but completely part of your being, which it is. So, unless there is an action derived from that understanding of this total involvement, there is no righteous behavior. And without righteous behavior, do what you will. Go to all the temple, to all the monasteries, to meditate, Zen, this, that. There is no meaning whatsoever. So, that being so, obviously this is an obvious fact. Whether you accept it, don't accept it, whether you say, well, I like to interpret it this way or that way, this is the fact. Unless your mind is extraordinarily healthy, untortured, clear, unconfused, how can you act rightly? And it must be tortured. It must have a bias. So long as these problems are not completely, deeply understood and changed, can this change be brought about by pressure, by outside influence, by somebody forcing you to change? Does change demand a motive? You understand, I'm confronted with this problem. Love and so on. And I realized I must change radically, deeply within my being. And to change, to bring about this change, which means I must be beyond fear, understand what is pleasure, pain, death, what is love. To bring about this radical change, I ask myself, and I hope you are asking it too, whether a motive is necessary. And is not or a motive based on fear or pleasure, pain or punishment or gain. Will there be a change if there is any form of pressure, influence by the will that says I will get more out of it, or I will suffer, therefore I'll resist? So motive of any kind will not bring about this change, which again is obvious. So then what is one to do? Is it clear so far? Can we proceed from there? I think we came to this point when we last met here. The observer sees the problem outside of himself. He says, there is pain, there is fear, there is death, and the enormity, the enormous burden of sorrow. He looks at it as though it were not part of himself. It is outside of him. And therefore he thinks he can bring about a change by analysis. By observation. That's clear, isn't it? So there is the observer, the examiner, the analyzer, separate from the thing analyzed. Hence, there is a conflict between the analyzer and the thing analyzed. Right? So that is the position in which most human beings are. They know the problem quite clearly. They put it outside of themselves and then try to analyze it and then go beyond it. And is the thing analyzed different from the analyzer? Or the analyzer is the analyzed? And if the analyzer is the analyzed, then what is it to do? Are we following each other? Is it somewhat clear? What am I to do when I realize I hate? Fear is hate. And there is fear. And there is hate and violence. For fear produces hate and violence. And any amount of tricks with non-violence doesn't end violence. So what is one to do? The analyzer sees the futility of analysis, for the analyzer is the analyzed. And realizing that, what is he to do? What action or non-action is to take place that will dispel or contain fear? Right? Are we going together in all this? Is there communication between us, or am I just talking just for the fun of talking? Don't please, just a minute, sir, don't ask question now, you'll ask a little later when I've finished talking. Does one realize, not intellectually, but actually, factually, directly, with that same intensity as you have when you have fear, with that same intensity, does one realize the analyzer is the analyzed? Then what takes place? If one realizes that the analyzer, the observer, is the observed and the analyzed, then what is the actual state of mind that has seen this? Because we're going to go into the question of thought, which was raised the other day. Thought has separated itself as the thinker and the thought, right? Thought has made fragment of thought as the thinker and the thought. Then the thinker tries to do something about the thought, control it, shape it, change it, and so on. But when the thinker is the thought, that is, there is no thinker if there is no thought. Then what is the state of the mind that realizes this, and at the same time he has to exercise thought completely, right? Are you following all this? Look, sir, I realize fear is the product of or sustained by thought, and that thought also has created the thinker, the observer, who says, I am afraid. Now I'm asking myself, and I hope you are, what is the state of the mind that says, that realizes both are one? The fear and the observer who says, I'm afraid, are both one. What is the state of the mind that realizes this complete unity? One must find out what that state is, because thought must be exercised all the time, necessarily, healthily, objectively, non-emotionally, clearly, logically, with great clarity. And also, the mind sees that thought brings about fragmentation as the me and the not me. The me as the observer and the not me, which is fear. But the me and the not me are both the same. So, can the mind being the whole being, that is emotions, feeling, great tenderness, great clarity of thought, which is the product of good brain, in which there is no disease, no perversion, no torture. All that is the mind. So the mind sees that thought must be exercised very clearly. And also it sees the danger of thought. The thought which fragments everything, mine and yours, we and they, my country and your country, my God and your God, my family, and so on, so on, so on. And yet the mind sees there is a state in which this fragmentation doesn't take place at all. So can the mind hold the two? Not hold, be in that state where it exercises thought completely, fully, logically. And it can act fully only when it's completely healthy, when there are no prejudice, no conditioning as mine and yours, which doesn't mean these are your trousers, they are my trousers. And at the same time, a state of mind in which thought has no place whatsoever, because in that there is no observer and the observed. Have you got all this? Because when there is this realization that the observer is the observed, all thought has come to an end at that level, there. What can thought do when it realizes that it has produced the thinker and the thought? That it has produced the observer who says, I'm frightened. So when thought realizes this, that it is producing fragments all the time, as the observer and the observed, in that realization thought becomes extraordinarily quiet, still. And the mind also then can exercise thought to its fullest extent and yet not be caught by the fragmentation which thought brings about. Is that clear? So, we have this problem then of fear. We went to the question of pleasure, excitement, possessiveness, dependency, my wife, my husband, my family, opposed to every other family, which is a monstrous thing. And now we come to this question of fear. Fear of many kinds. Fear of not being secure. Physically, one needs to have security. I must be assured of my next meal, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here. Or you either. One must be assured of shelter, roof over one's head, clothes and so on. We must have that absolutely for everybody. And that's only possible when thought doesn't bring about fragmentation. As your country, my country, more prosperous than they are, you follow all the appalling divisions which is brought about by nationality, wrong education, the color prejudice, and so on. The nationality prejudices bring about chaos in the world in which physical security is denied for everybody. That's fairly simple and fairly clear. Then there is fear of not being secure psychologically, inwardly. Therefore, being afraid I must possess, I must dominate, I must hold, and I will resist anything that interferes with that demand. I'm jealous, I'm anxious, I hate, I'm violent. Again, this fragmentation brought about by thought. And also one realizes that wherever there is fear of any kind, psychosomatic or purely physical, the mind and the brain must live in disorder, which is a neurotic state. Right? And most of us are neurotic. Because basically we are frightened. And therefore we are violent, we are aggressive, we are jealous, anxious, guilty, and all the rest of it. So can the mind, the total being, both the conscious as well as the deep down hidden parts of one's being, can all that be completely be free of fear? Unless you are free of fear, you cannot possibly behave rightly. Right? So that's a fundamental question as what is love? So we're asking that the mind, the entire being, not one part of it, we are asking whether the entire being, both the undiscovered and the discovered, the open as well as the hidden, can that total being be entirely, completely be free of fear? Again, don't please say it is possible or it is not possible. You don't know. If you say it's possible, it's your own prejudice. Or if you say it is not possible, it's again has no value. But to inquire into it is necessary, to go into it, find out. You know, we have hidden fears of which we don't know deep down. And they must be exposed so that you can look. So that unless you expose them, you will create illusions, every form of delusion. And is the exposure possible through analysis? You understand? Analyzing, step by step, deeply. Who is going to analyze it? The professional, the expert, the specialist, who are equally prejudiced. They're also conditioned. And are you capable of analyzing? That is, analyzing your motives, your responses outwardly, and analyzing, examining with great care all the hidden parts. Can you interpret the dreams, which is part of the expression of those fears or demands, motives, and outwardly? And if you are capable of analyzing, great many things are involved in that. Every analysis must be totally complete. Otherwise you take what, from that analysis you have learnt something, and what you have learnt you apply to the next analysis. Therefore it's incomplete. So, analysis is not the way, because it involves endless time. By the time you have completely analyzed your whole being, you are dead. So is there an understanding of fear, the total, deep-rooted fears of which one is not conscious? Can all that be exposed to observation? Right? Please see how extraordinarily important this is. Your escape from it has no value at all. Whether you go to be entertained by the church, by the temple, mass, by Zen, or by football or watching the tennis, doesn't solve fear. It's there always. So you have to completely resolve it. Now, knowing, because one has seen that fear is not separate from the observer. Right? Fear is part of the observer. It's not a fragment of the observer. It is the observer. Right? Then We know, we have observed, seen that thought creates this fragment between the observer and the observed. Thought makes this fragment. And thought has produced this fear. No? One is afraid of death. And you don't want death to happen today, you would rather let it happen in many years later. So there is an interval between the actual, the today, and the inevitable, which is the result of thought, is it not? Because thought doesn't want to end. Doesn't say, what will happen to me if everything collapses? I leave my family and all the rest of it. So thought breeds the fear of something called death. Right? Which is obvious. As thought has created the danger, the fear of danger, psychological danger. Therefore there is attachment, possessiveness, and all the rest of it. So thought has created this division between the living and the dying. Yes? So thought has said, this is life, the life being the torture, the misery, the confusion, the anxiety. And death, which is the ending of that, which is the living and the dying. To this living, thought has given extraordinary importance, and to death, it won't even look at it. It won't even find out what it is all about, because it is frightened. And also, one has found for oneself that there is a state of mind when the fragmentation has come to an end. Right? When thought no longer creates fragments, which we went into a little bit before. So can the mind look at fear, be aware that it is part of itself, and not try to avoid it, not try to run away from it, not try to analyze it, but be completely attentive, wholly there when fear takes place. So that there is no fragmentation. And then is there fear? Because in that attention, you have seen the whole structure of fear. Dependency, possessiveness, resistance, acceptance of belief as comfort and so on. All the structure which thought has brought about in order to avoid fear. So in the mind, the total mind, the entire being gives its whole attention at the moment of fear, which means there is no escape from, no interpretation, no comparing, no evaluation, but giving complete attention to it. Is there any form of fear? And now, please don't agree or disagree, go into it. And you will see the beauty of this for yourself. Because we are dealing with your life, not with my life. We are dealing with human life, not with a particular individual life. So, from that the question inevitably arises, can the mind die to itself? Die to all the things it has held, the memories, the pleasant and the unpleasant, the things it wants to do, hopes to achieve. Die to everything every day. Don't say it is possible. That's too childish. You have to do it. Die to all your grudges, to your like and dislike, to your hates, to your jealousies. Die to the demand for security, permanency. And the mind that is not fragmented, watching, in which there is only watching, not the observer and the thing observed. To such a mind, there is constant renewal. To such a mind, there is innocence. Such a mind is immortality. Because in that there is no fear. Therefore, one comes to know or realize or be in that peculiar state of what is called love. Because for most of us, love has become a pleasure through sex. And also, culturally, we say we must love humanity, your neighbor, love your God, which of course just a lot of platitudes have no meaning. But to understand this extraordinary complex problem of living, one has to face all this, not one by one. Take first love and understand it, or pleasure first, then and understand it, or fear, death, and one by one. If you do that, you are bringing about more and more fragmentation. But can you see the whole of it in which all this is involved? And in the understanding of one, you understand the whole thing. And then you can look at the skies. Then you can listen to the running waters. Look at the face of the neighbor or your wife or your husband without any distortion, without any image, and therefore it's always fresh, young and new. And it is only such a mind that can realize if there is truth or not. Such a mind does not seek truth, because all search is a form of escape from the actual. Do you want to ask any questions?
I would like to know, as you said in the beginning of your speech, there are many things wrong in this world, and that anyhow, since many years, many teachers, priests and gurus and so on have been trying to address. Therefore, I would like to know what you think is the purpose of your own speeches and how you want to achieve that purpose, and how much think you have achieved, if you're satisfied with that.
What is the first part, sir?
No, I want to know what you want to achieve from your own speeches.
What is it I want to achieve through my own speeches? Nothing. Then you might ask, why do you talk? In that, if I don't want to achieve anything, then why do you talk at all? Right? What do you say? I know what I will say, but what do you say? What you say to yourself, sir, not to me. Now, in that question is implied that you want to help people, right? You know, that's one of the greatest fallacies. Wanting to help people. That's what the priests have done, what the philosophers have done, what the popes have done, what the religious organizations have done. Help people. And in that there is great vanity. Then you say, or ask me, why do you talk at all if you don't want to help? You know, there is such thing as merely pointing out, which is not help at all, just pointing out, to do what you like with it. Right? Just point out. You can be entertained with what is being said, take it seriously or not seriously, or just totally disregard. But it is necessary to point out, do look at that marvelous mountain. And if you don't want to look, it's up to you. That's the first part of the question. Second part of the question, what was it, sir?
Well, how do you want to point these things out to people? I mean, you cannot by speeches reach so many people.
You cannot reach many people by talks. What am I to do? Publish books, which we do propaganda, reach many people. Sir, what is important? If you live what is being said, not according to what the speaker says, but because you see the necessity of it, then you will also act, you will also speak, you will also publish. The second question is, how far have you realized what you are talking about? Now this question has been asked umpteen times so often. First of all, why do you ask? Why do you ask the speaker? Why are you concerned whether the speaker is living or not living with what he is saying? Do you want him to be an example, a hero? Or do you want to find out he's a damn hypocrite? And if the speaker says, I am or I am not, how will you know? Right? How will you know that he is living according to what he's saying? What is your criterion, your measure? Which is not, please, I'm not trying cleverly to turn the tables on you. How will you know what man is living inside? Huh? You say you must have. I can only know if you are living by my standards, which is you must have a robe or 2 suits or have 1 meal a day, and so on, so on, so on. Which means you have a standard according to which you are judging. And that standard is always conditional. Right? Because the saints, which I personally think are really quite abnormal people, the saints have set the example. And according to that, you're measuring. And I said, don't bother, please, whether the speaker has realized or not, but find out for yourself whether you can live that way. Which is the only sane approach, isn't it? Because you can't peep into me. You can't say, well, you are not living up to that. So what is important is not whether this speaker is living or not, but whether you are living it. Then you will stop gossiping. And we gossip probably with ourselves or with others most part of the day. And if you don't gossip, then if you have no measure for another according to your temperament, your conditioning, then you'll probably give all your energy to find out for yourself whether you can live so completely without fear and what it means to love. Right? Is that enough?